Awesome. So today we're talking about recession-proofing your mobile bar company. Hi, Jasmine. So I've been around the industry long enough that I actually worked in restaurant and events during the 2007, 2008 recession. I was a part of the senior management team wherein we had meeting after meeting deciding what we were going to do in order to make it through the recession. Now, at the time, I was working at both a large hotel and then about for 2007 to 2008, and then 2008 to 2010, well, actually till 2013. But the end of the recession was kind of right around the 2010 part, at least where I was. I was in a large restaurant company. We had 5 units. And we continued to grow. When I first started, we had 3 restaurants, then we became 4 restaurants, then we became 5 restaurants, despite the fact that we were in an economic downturn and pulling out of a deep recession. We tried a lot of things. Some things didn't work, some things worked really well. And so utilizing that foundation of knowledge, having experienced and lived through a recession, and also what I have learned just, educationally, what I've read, people I've talked to that are professionals. I have 17 tips that I'm going to share with you. Now, they are actionable tips, so I'm not pontificating here. These are things that you can actually go out and do that will help improve your chances of not only succeeding during these upcoming economic times of downturn, but also thrive. And so I'm excited to share those things with you. That's not my mouse. There we go. Okay. So we're going to cover 4 main things today. The first thing is, what is a recession? I don't want to assume that people kind of know what that is. So I'm going to define it in super easy terms and why we're discussing it. Then we're going to talk about me and what I can and cannot speak on with authority. I don't want to falsely represent who I am, what I know, and how I can support you. So I want to make that clear. Then I'm going to talk to you about the 17 actionable things that you can do to grow and thrive during an economic downturn. Not just this one, but just in general. And then we'll talk about what's next. And if you have any questions as we go, feel free to drop them in the chat. And I will probably pause at various times depending on the question and address them, or we can just do a quick Q&A at the end as well. So what is a recession? Now, there's a technical term about what a recession is, and it includes 2 consecutive quarters of like negative growth, something like that. But I like this particular definition, which is a significant decline in economic activity spreading across the economy, lasting more than a few months, normally visible in real GDP, real income, employment, industrial production, and wholesale retail sales. Now, what does that mean? It means that we're gonna, I'm just gonna, it looks like everyone's muted. What that means is that it's not just a blip wherein people are seeing negative income. It is a prolonged period of time wherein there might be decreased consumer spending that actually is either driven by or resulting in a visible decrease in people's real income. So how much money they actually have to spend, their employment, industrial production, meaning you see things like large companies start to scale back their production, like we're seeing with oil right now, and wholesale retail sales. And there's a saying out there that I saw when I was doing the research for this presentation that said, a recession is when your neighbor loses their job. A depression is when you lose yours. And I think that's kind of one of those things where a recession is something that you kind of see starting to impact people. Whether or not impacts like you and your standing directly doesn't necessarily determine whether or not it's an economic thing. There's lots of people who experience recessions, especially in some areas of the country. For example, DC, Washington, DC area tends to be pretty well insulated from economic downturns because the government still has money during a recession. And government employees are oftentimes like they're heavily employed in the DC area. You'll also see a lot of government contractors, government attorneys, medical workers. Those are pretty well insulated during a recession. And so some areas of the country do not experience recession as badly as the rest of the country. So you might not see the impacts of this. It doesn't mean that the recession isn't a real thing. I really liked this quote, and I searched for the source, and it just looks like a bunch of articles around the internet have kind of ripped off this quote. Who knows where it came from? It's in a bunch of different articles. So this is not me. I did take this off the internet, but it says, and I put this in here because this is why we care. We care about an upcoming recession because purchases depend on consumers having disposable income, feeling confident about their future, trusting in business and the economy, and embracing lifestyles and values that encourage consumption. We as mobile bar owners are largely luxury services. And so we rely heavily on people not only trusting us and the economy, but also embracing the lifestyle that we project. Right. So like there's lots of people out there that sling drinks from a 6-foot table on a black tablecloth. We might even do that on occasion as necessary. Right. But we oftentimes have fancier setups. Maybe we don't have rigs, but maybe we've invested in like portable bars that are, maybe they have LED lighting, or maybe they're wood instead of just being plastic. We've invested in kind of differentiating ourselves as mobile bar companies from just, the standard I'm a bartender on the weekends type thing. And so that impacts us when people might say, well, as much as I would like a mobile bar, any old bartender will do. Like we don't want that, right? We don't want any old bartender to do, because that's not our zone of genius. And so the following steps are what I'm recommending that you can implement and enact in order to demonstrate your value and ensure that you don't become something that people are waiting for the recession to end to invest in. Now, it is important that, again, I talk a little bit about me and why I'm talking about this, right? I'm a highly educated educator and entrepreneur. I read things, I talk to people who know more things than I do about this topic, but I only can filter it through my personal knowledge bank and draw conclusions based on the things that I've experienced and that I've learned and that I've done. I'm not an economist. I'm not a data scientist. I'm not a banker. I don't spend my days watching the market. I don't even understand the stock market. I don't. Ask my husband. It enrages him. I just haven't taken the time to learn it. I do, however, based on all indicators and the professionals and whatever, think there will be a soft recession in the next few months. There's a lot of economic indicators that say that's the case. And I'm confident 100% so that mobile bars can thrive whether or not there's a recession or not. And that's why I'm here today, because it was important to me during COVID to make sure that I was supporting this industry through it. And I had a lot of success there. A lot of my coaching clients not only got through COVID alive, like their business being still around. But I actually have had some clients that ended up better off after COVID than before it. We enacted, various different strategies with industry adjacent service lines that are more profitable and more lucrative than the original bartending model that they had. So I do have a success track in helping people through tougher economies. And that's why I'm here, because it's important to me to be that person who you can depend upon in tougher times. So the very first thing that I encourage you to do is to rethink your value proposition. Cut out any expenses that only matter to you, as long as they don't violate your core values. That's an important thing. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. The first one are napkins. This is a dumb example, but this is how granular I want you to think. I hate single ply napkins. I hate them, like the core of my soul. I hate single ply napkins. But you know what I realized? Nobody else cares about their napkins. And so I was spending double, sometimes triple, getting the 2-ply napkins, the bar naps, that didn't disintegrate as soon as you put a cup on them. And nobody else cared. And so that was one expenditure that could very easily be saved on. And you can go through your entire business model and take a look at every decision that you make and whether or not people actually give a shit. Another one that I use often, if you've been through the academy, is fresh pressed juices. I started Bar Magnolia with fresh pressed juices. They were very expensive. I actually ended my time with Bar Magnolia with fresh pressed juices because I had managed to figure out how to do them utilizing economies of scale, meaning it didn't actually cost me a terrible amount when done that way. However, in between there, when I was trying to figure that out, I did a little test and I put on all my packages, juices, and then for $1 a person upgrade, fresh pressed juices. Now it would have cost me more than $1 a guest to provide those fresh pressed juices, but it was an experiment to see if people actually gave a shit enough about fresh pressed juices to pay for them. And I never sold it once. And I did over 100 events while that was on my proposal system that way. Nobody cared. And I think when I say nobody cared, it's not that nobody cared themselves. They didn't care enough to pay for other people to enjoy fresh pressed juices, if that makes sense, right? So it's one thing to get fresh pressed juices when you're making your own margaritas at home. It's another if you're going to invest, $150 to ensure that all of your friends can drink fresh lime juice in their margaritas. And that is one area that you could look at and be like, they don't seem to care. So I'm not going to care, and it'll save me money during this time of economic downturn wherein my profit margins are already struggling. Cups are another one. I'm a little bougie about the cups that I like. There's this one type of cup, super inexpensive, but they crack. And oftentimes every sleeve I open, they have like multiple that are cracked. Pet peeve of mine, I'd rather pay more and have a good, durable cup that I know feels good in the hand. It isn't going to leak when I hand it to someone because there was a crack I didn't notice. But ultimately, if my margins are on the line, then I might be willing to deal with it. It really just depends on where the priorities are. Now, where you don't want to compromise is anything that violates your core values. So if in your core values, like your heart, you basically you want to gag if you were to not do it. Fresh pressed juices. Maybe you're like organic all the way. And someone says, well, why don't you just not offer organic? And it triggers almost like a gag reflex in you. Don't do that. Don't change that. If it's something that is so near and dear to your heart and is a hill that you will die on, that is non-negotiable to you. You will not like yourself if you change that, and we don't want that. So there are potentially lots of ways within your business, the things that you offer, that you could rethink the value proposition there. And what I mean by that is that things that matter to you sometimes don't matter to others. Like my napkin example, nobody cared about the napkins; they just didn't. It was like, I'm over here spending more money on it because it was important to me. But ultimately, if they don't care, can I suck it up? Yes, I can, begrudgingly. But so go through all of your offerings, all of the things that you offer, and rethink what is on there because it's important to you, and what's on there because you know that your clients have demonstrated it's important to them. And not just one client, not just one person that was like, oh, I booked you because you offer fresh pressed juices. That's a thing they mention in your reviews. That's a thing that they tell their friends about. That's a thing that you are known for, right? The second thing is that you need to put on your marketing pants. If you are an established mobile bar, you've been in the business for 3 or 4 years, you're probably like, I got a flywheel, yo. I don't even have to market. I don't even have to show up at things anymore. I don't need to be on social media because my flywheel is fine. I get enough inquiries to keep me happy. That could dry up very quickly. And not only that, during our time of economic downturn, when lots of other providers may be going under or selling their bar, it creates a environment of distrust, not distrust so much as unknown, right? So your regular event planners and venues, they may not know if you're around anymore, and they may not take the time to ask you. They may just not know, right? And so there's 2 things. You want to stay top of mind. Remember, in your visibility strategy, you want to be known, be remembered. So you want to stay top of mind. And you want to ensure that they know that you're still around. And so the third thing you also want to do is like pick up new people. So in any type of economy, there will always be people falling out and joining. And you want to make sure that when people join, they know about you. And so if you have been relying on your flywheel and word of mouth in the past, you cannot do that anymore. So dedicate 50% of your time, if possible, more if possible, to feeding the flywheel, making new connections, making the rounds with the people that you know already, and also meeting new people. The bars are not the only ones that are going to go and do other things. If you have like this happened to me, this is a personal story. I had a luxury bar event planner who was my favorite flywheel. Like she literally only gave me the awesome clients because she had her own branding that resonated with only awesome people. She was very particular about how she worked with. She'd only do, I think she said like 10 clients a year, but they came in with budgets of like $500,000. So when she came to me, whatever they wanted, the answer was yes. I literally, one of her clients paid $3,500 to have boxed water at their wedding. Boxed water. So like she was my favorite. They came in pre-vetted. She only used me. And whatever she asked for, I was like game for, right? And there was just pure profit on those events. And she decided to exit the industry for her own personal reasons. And that hurt my bottom line. And so if you have amplifiers or people that you work with and they decide for whatever reason that they can't weather this economic storm and they exit, what are you left with, right? You need to constantly be feeding that flywheel. So if you've been around for a while, you now need to pretend like you're brand new and start making friends, kissing hands, shaking hands and kissing babies, like you're brand new. And if you are brand new, take this as an opportunity to get known, because there will be people that exit out of the space for their own variety of personal reasons. And you want to be the one to opportunistically take advantage of those holes. So become a marketer first. Number 3, go after the sure thing. We know based on historicals that weddings and corporate events are fairly recession proof. Just because there's a recession doesn't mean people stop getting married. They don't. Now they do change their behavior about getting, like how they get married. I don't know who was around back in the 2007, 2008, but that's where the barn weddings came in. And I'm not talking the nice, cushy, air-conditioned barns. We were removing bales of hay from barns to have weddings in them because they were covered. You didn't have to rent a tent. Your uncle probably had one, right? And so, but weddings still happened. They still happened. They just happened differently. We are well positioned for that type of creativity and ingenuity, right? We have rigs. We can bring our own bar. Oftentimes we have a backup plan for electricity. Doesn't even need to have that. We can make ourselves prepared if they need, like we need water, that sort of thing, right? And so we're well positioned for that type of thing. Weddings will continue to happen. Their budgets may not be as big. So there are 2 types of events that I recommend targeting, and you get to pick which. It might be difficult to target both because they're very different clientele, right? Luxury and budget. Now, I'm not generally the person that stands over here and is like, target the budget people. So just know if you do target budget, you'll be working harder and more for less money. However, it also is a bit of a dogfight down there, right? Because everybody wants to get booked and everybody's willing to kind of give away their services just to kind of keep working. So my preference would be the luxury markets because they've got money. They just do. They are pretty immune to most economic downturns, especially soft ones. And what that means is like in this case, indicators suggest that we won't see the same housing market crisis because banks have not been over lending, meaning they aren't actively trying to lend to people who can't make their mortgage payment. So they don't predict it'll be as bad as 2007, 2008. So they're referencing it as a soft recession. But something like a soft recession is probably not going to harm the luxury market like it will. People. Oh, sorry, Mika, I'm just going to mute you. If you do have questions or you want to make a comment, please do so in the chat. All right. So number 3 here is the sure thing. Oh. And yeah, so target low budget or luxury, and target corporate and weddings. So if you haven't been targeting corporate already, now's the time. Oftentimes people will pick one to start off with, which I like. I like it when that happens, but we may not have that luxury right now. And so if you don't have a strategy for reaching out to corporate clients, if you don't have packages that would resonate with corporate clients, now's the time to create those. What does that mean? A 4-hour corporate package? Probably not. Probably not. The 2-hour happy hour? Yeah, they might be down for that. Do they want full bar signature cocktails, like, the whole shebang? Maybe not. Maybe just beer and wine, one signature cocktail, right? So do your market research, your informational interviews, and start creating a package that might be attractive so that you can get corporate clients. The other thing about corporate business right now is that they've had a rough time of it between COVID and the labor shortages. They're trying to retain people and they're trying to attract people. And oftentimes corporations do that with perks. And so it could be a monthly happy hour. It could be a quarterly happy hour, but it's worth asking those questions and then filling that need. Number 4, if this was on your bingo card, B9, because practice, profit first. Read the book and implement it. It's not enough to have just read the book. I can't tell you how many times people have come to me and I'm like, do you practice profit first? And they're like, well, I've read the book. Awesome. That is step 1. But it does not help you if all you've done is read the book. You do actually need to implement it. It saved my business during COVID. And it not only saved my business, I've had numerous clients reach out to me and tell me that my insistence that they implement it saved their business during COVID too. And so this is, if anything, this is one of the ones, start it. Implement profit first. It provides you the framework to not overextend your business. If you've done it for long enough, it actually will also calm your anxiety because you know exactly how much money you have to do certain things. So if your operating account, which is what you used for mixers and ice and new equipment or whatever, if that's looking a little low, you don't get new equipment. You figure it out. You borrow, beg, barter, steal, but you don't buy new equipment, right? Because the number one reason that the small businesses go under is cash flow. And so if you run out of cash, then you may not qualify for additional cash sources. And also it helps you sleep better at night, knowing you can cover your expenses, right? So profit first is my 4th recommendation. My 5th recommendation is to keep your staff working. I had to do this during COVID, and it made all the world of difference because after COVID, I still had my core team. I wasn't making a ton of money on staffing events, but they were making enough money to stay on my roster. They didn't have to go and find another job, another second job, and they really appreciated the fact that there was some consistency from Bar Magnolia. They became raving fans. They're like, I literally had one of my bartenders tell me I saved her life. She said if it wasn't for the events during COVID with Bar Magnolia, she would have had to stay in her abusive relationship and she would never have been able to leave. And that's kind of an extreme story. So don't don't assume that you're saving lives when you're keeping them working, but they need the money too. Recessions are hard on everyone. And so while a lot of us are like, F staffing only events. I'm not doing bartending only. It's a nightmare. It's not worth my time. In a booming market, yeah, absolutely. They are noise. But in a downturn market, keeping them working and keeping you out there visible to other people, that's worth it. I reached out to caterers and venues and offered to be their bar service. And that worked out really well for us. I didn't necessarily promote it, but one of the first things that a lot of the caterers and venues did was cut their bar staff. They may have had an entirely dedicated bar staff, but then when events started drying up, they cut them because they're like, well, we have got servers that can do it. We just can't, keep the payroll. And so I was able to come in and say, I will be your full bar staff. Like, you don't even need to worry about it. You don't have to keep, I got it. And that kept them working. And that was really helpful. Number 6, keep your overhead low. Now, this is an obvious one. You might already do this, but if you are in that scaling phase, you've launched and you're like ramping up, because 2022 is like the biggest wedding year since 1986, push pause. Because if you're out there signing leases, if you're out there buying large equipment like coolers and ice machines, you might be overextending yourself unintentionally. So if it's not actively assisting you in growing or executing events, don't commit to it long term. That's my recommendation. If you can pause, hold off as long as you can. Again, beg, borrow, and steal. Get creative. If you need access to a walk-in, ask a caterer if you can sign like a micro lease with them and pay them $50 a month versus $1,100, $1,200, $1,500 for a warehouse lease. Where'd it go? Okay. Number 7, low-key diversify. Now, I'm going to explain low-key. I do not recommend, and hear me clearly, I do not recommend spinning off an entirely new business. I know this is hard because mobile bar owners are oftentimes multi-passionate and they're out there having a new idea every day, every hour sometimes. And so when the bar kind of dries up, it's very attractive to like go out and start another thing. What people fail to remember or recognize is how hard and expensive it is to spin up an entirely new business with entirely new branding, with entirely new licensing, with an entirely different ideal client, an ideal staff, the whole thing. We get shiny object syndrome and we're like, but I could sell lip balm for $1. And if I only had like 8,000 people a month, I'd be 8,000, 4 figures richer every month, right? Yes, but it's so hard to get things ramped. And so my suggestion is to implement industry adjacent, industry complementary, that's the word I was looking for, services that you may not have offered before for whatever reason. Coffee service, get into ice cream, especially if you've got a rig. You're already, potentially certified to serve food. You can add it on to something that's already there. Like maybe you've got, we'll do bar and then we can do a dessert ice cream service or something. We can do boozy floats, something like that, right? These will fill revenue gaps. It'll potentially open up additional clients that wouldn't have necessarily used your bar services, but maybe they will use your ice cream service. So maybe a PTA is not going to use you for bar services, but they might for an ice cream social, right? And you can use a lot of the same equipment, right? So think about virtual cocktail classes, coffee service, things that are adjacent to what you already do that you can utilize your core business assets and resources for, but might bring in new clients that you wouldn't necessarily have gotten through your bar services alone. Number 8, add strategic partnerships. So if you haven't already, consider going around and adding strategic partnerships to your invoicing options, your add-on options. So neon lights, vintage rentals, menu creation, you name it, caterers, cheese and charcuterie, any of those things. I'm not recommending you go out and do cheese and charcuterie because that's not who I am. I'm not gonna recommend that. You can if you want to. But if someone already offers those things and you just slap a 10% service fee on them, you're making 10% more on your bottom line without having to actually go out and buy the serving platters, all of the little ramekins, the honey, all the stuff, right? You have to build out an entire operational flow to implement something like that, wherein you could just hire someone else, mark it up 10% just from a service fee, like a facilitation fee, and then you're making more money and they're making more money, right? Win-win. They get to do their thing, you get to make a little bit more money. And so consider adding strategic partnerships. Oh, the other thing about strategic partnerships, you may have heard me say this before if you ever watched like a Q&A or anything, don't ask them for a discount. That is not who we want to be. We want to fully pay them and appreciate them at their full value. Most entrepreneurs, much like us ourselves, usually undervalue ourselves to begin with. But we also don't want them to, for them to see us as someone who just wants a deal, because we don't, or for them to deprioritize events that you've sold for them because they're making less money at it, right? We want them to feel valued and excited that we're basically being a free marketing, source for them. So I don't know why this wasn't number 1, to be honest, but don't do illegal shit. Number 9, don't do illegal shit, because this is what I saw a lot during COVID. And for those who don't know, not only is my husband an attorney, he's an attorney for one of the state's regulatory boards, not the ABC, because there was a conflict of interest there for obvious reasons. But let me tell you, they want their money during a recession too. They actively go out and try and find people who are in violation so that they can basically pay their own damn bills. So don't do illegal shit. Don't get on Instagram and sell alcohol. In almost any case, that's not generally legal. There are some places where you can get a per the drink liquor license and sell on, but not very many. So in general, that's a no-no. Don't offer alcohol delivery unless you know that that's legal. I've seen local mobile bars get busted for that. And they're like, free delivery of alcohol. Well, mobile bars do not qualify for the permit necessary to deliver alcohol. That is a no-no. Just don't. Number 10, polish up your upsell game. It is so much easier to get someone who's already spent money with you to spend more money with you. And let's make it easy, right? So if you've already sold them something, consider something like, hey, you want to add a hot chocolate bar to your event? Do you want to add a cotton candy cocktail to your event? Whatever it is, right? Try and upsell them. And if you don't have an upsell game, there are lots and lots of even free YouTube videos out there that will show you how to upsell without feeling yucky about it, right? Especially if you come from a place of service. And if you haven't already taken the lesson in MVP, I think it's named sales that serves, something like that. It'll talk you through what that looks like. You're just trying to make it the best experience possible, right? You're not necessarily trying to rip them off. They have the ability to say, no, don't be pushy about it, but do make the suggestion. Oftentimes they didn't even think about it. But once you do say it, they're like, oh, yes, that. It could be as simple as upgrading the garnishes. Yeah, we usually stick a lime in this, but for an extra $30, we'll do some rosemary. Sign me up for that. Yes, please. I love rosemary. You can't eat it though. That is one of my pet peeves about garnishes that you can't eat. But anyways, number 11, use technology. I recently had someone join one of my group coaching programs, and bless her, she had managed to make it multi-decades in her business without using anything but Excel. Now is not the time to be that person. Now is the time to implement technology that will enable you to save time, save money, potentially even labor, so you don't need as much assistance. Technology these days can do almost anything. I'm working with a one-on-one client right now, and we're setting up her HoneyBook so that when someone books, it kicks it automatically over to Zapier, applies a project plan for that person, assigns the necessary people with due dates in order to get all of the things done for each and every event. Now, that was a cluster F of her having to remember what to do, who to assign, how to teach people how to do those things. And we've just eliminated all of that by using technology. So that's number 11. Number 12, delegate. Delegate. Well, not only are you not the best person for every job, but you're also probably the most expensive person for a lot of those jobs. In this example, for the number 2, I think, was spend 50% of your time marketing. And well, if you are not able to market because you're doing admin tasks, but you could hire someone for $12 an hour like there are VAs out there, or at least VA companies that say that you can hire them for like $4, $8 an hour. I don't know. But if you have someone that you could teach, someone in college, whomever, that can do some of those admin tasks for you, then if you're out there selling an event, that's got to be worth more than that, right? So do the math and figure out, what are you spending time on that is worth less than what you could be making if you were doing something else, whether it be sales, marketing, whatever that might be. So delegate when it's appropriate. It also gives jobs to other people, which is nice. 13, look at your menu. So if you haven't already done this already, which was a recommendation I made earlier, when the Ukraine war started and I predicted the increase in costs of things like juices and sugars, I said, go through your cocktail menu and make sure that you have it designed in a way that is economical for you. If you haven't done that already, now is the time to do it. And what I mean by that is take a look at what everything costs. If lemon juice is less expensive than lime juice right now, put on more sours, more lemon-based cocktails. You can always switch it up, do it seasonally, right? If it's cheaper right now to do dried flowers in your cocktails, then upgrade your garnish options on your cocktails. And we don't have to sacrifice beauty or anything, but we do want to make sure that we're making the most cost-effective decisions on our menu, and that we're not just letting our menu kind of be stagnant. Number 14, the profit is in the spatula. This is a saying that the COO of the restaurant company that I worked for back during the 2007-8 recession, he would tell all of our chefs, the profit is in the spatula. And nobody knew what that meant. I didn't even know what that meant. But basically what he meant was that if you were like mixing something and you were putting it into the bowl with a spoon, you'd have a whole bunch of stuff left on the bowl. You might even get like an entire serving, but even if you only got like 1/8 of a serving using a spatula to get it out of the bowl, then that 1/8 of a serving would add up over time, right? Now, like I told you guys in the beginning, that same restaurant company was able to grow from 3 restaurants to 5 restaurants during the recession. And I believe in their methodology. So number 14 here, minimize waste as much as possible. Cross-utilize ingredients, freeze, dehydrate, store responsibly. I mean, when I said store responsibly after dehydrate, because I've seen some people that DIY their own dehydrated fruits, don't necessarily store it well, and they get moldy and then you can't use them. So it's kind of a waste of time and product. So make sure that you're storing things responsibly, and cross-utilizing as much as possible, because the profit is in the spatula. Number 15. Give past clients a reason to return. I said this earlier when I said upsell, because it's easier to have clients that have already spent money with you spend more money with you. This is the same thought, in that if they've already paid you once and they had an awesome experience, give them a reason to pay you again. So if it's a wedding that you did for them, anniversary, baby shower, birthday, whatever that might be, if it's a corporate event that you've worked, create some options that might be attractive to do additional corporate events. I recently worked with a client who put together a package or a brochure that offered bundles. So you could buy 1 happy hour or 2 happy hours or 3 happy hours. And you could go from there. And they may just need a reason to hire you, and they maybe aren't that creative. Number 16, amp up your social proof. Encourage public displays of affection to your brand. Send multiple emails. I've seen this before where people are like, I sent them an email to give me a review. Nobody ever responds. No one says that you can't follow back up with them, right? And play the sob story if you have to. These are tough times, and you would really appreciate it if they were able to share how much they enjoyed working with you, so that they could continue, that you can continue to thrive despite these, difficult times. And on that note, if you have gotten any value out of this presentation so far, if you wouldn't mind publicly posting your appreciation, that's good for Mobile Bar Academy and Mobile Bev Pro Social Proof as well. And finally, number 17, Build a community and share resources. Community is probably the number one thing that gets most people through economic downturns, is community, knowing that they have people to turn to if they need them, resources to share if they need them, and two people working towards the same endeavor are going to be more powerful than one person. And we have a community that's primed for this. I have examples in the past of mobile bars that have formally merged forces, doubling their fleet and taking over an entire city. Examples where one mobile bar company had a ton of equipment that they just weren't fully booking out, and another mobile bar company that didn't want to invest the overhead in additional bars. And so they shared. And obviously you want to make sure you have good agreements in place so that everyone feels really good about it, but that can really get people through. Another example is a client of mine that did a huge multi-day event, but needed a ton of staff. And everyone knows right now it's hard to find staff. And so she worked with another bar company to supplement her staff. And it was a win-win for everybody. That mobile bar company made 5 figures worth of revenue for not only themselves, but their staff during a time when they weren't otherwise working. And the other mobile bar was able to execute a large event that they wouldn't have been able to do without staff. That's a win-win. We want the win-wins, right? So community is what's really going to get us through here. And obviously this is a picture of our community at camp. Love that picture. And then this is the Q&A portion. Also, a little plug, if you want additional support from me, you can hire me. This is a cow. This is a Highland cow. I'm going to stick him as many places I can in my educational content as possible because I love him. And that's it. I would love to answer any questions that you guys might have. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. I'm glad that you love the idea of bundling happy hours, Paul.
I do. That's pretty awesome. I wouldn't even have thought of that. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. Although since no one else is talking, I will. But so we have an opportunity to do the Illinois State Fair. 11 days, and my dog's found somebody at the door. But over 400,000 people. I guess in 2019 they had 519,000, which was their second highest.
Wow.
We are not allowed to do alcohol there just due to they already have that contracted with, I don't know, somebody else. But we're going to do coffees and smoothies. So suggestions on, I don't know how to do that effectively. I mean, I'm assuming 5% is kind of the goal. Is that what you either have experienced or know to be true? You can expect 5% to buy from you of the people.
It really depends. I've seen estimates all over the place, anywhere from like 5 to 20. There are a few variables I would, if you can get answers to. One, are you the only non-alcoholic beverage server there? How many locations will you have? Where will they place you? What sort of marketing is available to you, right? So if you were able to set up like sandwich board signs that says frosty cold shaken lemonades this way, like all around the fair, you're going to get more business than if someone just stumbles upon you and be like, oh, the shaken lemonades, yes, please, right? So there are a number of things that could drive how much business that you get in a scenario like that. And also what you serve, right? So if it's like 100 degrees there, and I don't know if it even does that in Illinois, but let's say it's like 100 degrees and you're serving hot coffee, obviously it's going to be not as great as if you're serving cold lemonades or iced coffee, that sort of thing. So many.
Right, yeah, we're doing the iced coffee pour overs and then the smoothies.
Nice.
Yeah.
I personally would recommend something that's like easy to drink. I mean, smoothies are fine. I find smoothies to be, I don't like them. They're high in sugar personally. So like if my kids wanted a smoothie, I'd be like, no. But if they wanted a shaken lemonade, I'd be like, yeah, we can do that. So maybe adding something like an iced tea, flavored iced tea, lemonade, that sort of thing. You can also pre-batch that stuff so easily, whereas you can't with a smoothie that well.
Yeah, we got the big machines or whatever, but I mean, they're only 3 gallons each, and running the numbers, I mean, it's 5% of 450,000 people is still a lot of damn people per day in 11 days.
Yeah.
So I don't know that the machine would even be able to keep up. I
Yeah.
told Valerie, I'm like, we're gonna have to buy fucking 5 more blenders because we're gonna blow those other ones out, you know, at
You couldn't pay
20,000.
You couldn't pay me to do smoothies at a fair. You just nope, fuck no. But the other thing that I would consider is a refrigerated truck. When I just worked with my client who did that massive like multi-day event up in, I think, Maine, they ended up doing 2 refrigerated trucks, and she's like, I needed both of them. So a refrigerated truck might be helpful. I mean, of course, she had like beer and stuff, but if you were to do mass smoothies, it would be faster if it was already cold.
You got me thinking.
No, yeah, big events kind of operationally require a lot more equipment, that sort of thing. But
well, then you got space requirements, things like that. You know, we're paying, I don't know, $2,500 or something to be there, but there's no, as of right this second, there's no profit share, so we don't have to pay them anything.
That's awesome.
Just $2,500 up front. But
yeah.
Oh, and 450 just to hook up to the electric. I was like, holy shit. But they don't want all the generators, so I get it.
And smoothies are, you know, a huge drain. So anything that blends or cools things down like that are gonna take up some energy.
All right, I'll let other people talk.
There's only 3 other people here. Let's see, does anybody else have questions or?
Hi, Sarah, I have a question. I'm kind of new to the network and new to the academy, but I've been in sort of the planning phase for about 8 months now and was really just getting ready to launch. And so what specific advice would you have for new businesses with this recession sort of coming down the pipeline, you know, crushing dreams?
Well, first, I think that this is a really great opportunity for you. And one of the reasons is that a lot of the older, more established mobile bars already have a ton of overhead. It is way more expensive for them to continue operating than it is for you because you're lighter, you're more nimble. You probably don't have things like a warehouse, a full team that relies on you consistently. And so it's going to be less expensive for you to navigate a recession than it is for an OG. So if you focus a lot of your time on entering the market, making relationships, networking, I mean, you have the opportunity to really get in when a lot of other people might be getting out. And so I honestly think new bars are well situated for a recession to really build their business. It's the same thing. I don't know if you've ever read the book. I have recommended, Paul knows that I have a love-hate relationship with because it's a bit of a bro book, but it's called the 10X method or something by Grant Cardone. But he talks about this one very specific story in that book where during I'm pretty sure it might have been the 90s, the recession in the 90s, but it might have been the 2007, 2008, where the recession was coming and all of his competitors scaled back. They scaled back their marketing, they stopped hiring, and he scaled up on purpose because he was new to the market. And so instead of scaling back, he just went all in. He doubled his marketing. He increased pay for people. He actively went after some of the best salespeople from other organizations because they were like being told, like, we're not doing anything now because of the recession. And he's like, we're doing it all over here. And so he took some of the best people, he amped up his marketing, and as a result, he exploded and basically like took over the market. So a lot of times, if you have the guts, to push through, a lot of times, now the recessions are when the most success can be made. I think there's even a stat out there that says more billionaires are made during recession than in a bull market, because there's opportunity and a ton of fear. And so people are more likely to pull back. And if you have the ability to push forward, the opportunity's there.
That's
Good.
great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anything else, Allison or the Great Lakes Bar Services? Do you guys have any questions? Okay. Well, then we'll end it there, guys. Thank you for coming to the presentation. If you want to watch the replay, we will get that loaded up. And if you have any questions, you know how to reach me. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, Sarah.